Tuesday morning. Blessings. I thank God for the blessings. I really do. I thank God for all of my blessings that I'm able to still enjoy while He allows me to do so. Blessing, 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 blessing. Merci beaucoup, mon Dieu. Je t'en prie de continuer à me garder pour protéger ma famille. Il faut amener la paix au monde, la paix mondiale. So, today we are on our way to pick up Munchkin number 1. He had a paper due this morning at 8 o'clock. As an aside, so he has to turn in assignments at certain times, and those times are up like on Canvas, which is what I think all universities pretty much are using for like assignments, and you can look at his syllabus and class schedule, assignments, and all of that. So what ended up happening is he doesn't really pay attention to the AM or PM, and so it'll be 11:59 and you won't see that it's AM instead of PM, and it's the beginning of the school year, so okay. I'm not exactly sure why this person is just standing there, but I should have gone the other way. Anyway, so he is getting acclimated to that, so he's missed like a couple of like assignments. Well, not missed, he's turned them in, but like because he thought it was 11 p.m. he turned one in at 7 p.m. and so that is late. That's a late assignment. I'm not sure what his syllabus says about late assignments, but he knows that he can't keep doing that. And then there's another one where it was a quiz for chemistry. I don't know if I already talked about this, but this was last week, and that was devastating for him because he really cares about his grades, 4.0 GPA, you feel me? And so he thought that it was due at 11 something p.m. and it was a.m. before class, and so so a few hiccups like that. But anyway, he had a paper due today for the Hiroshima bombing, or on the Hiroshima bombing, I should say, and whether or not it was legal and was it ethical. And he had to take a position in this paper, and this is a 3-page paper. Is that my tires? I don't know. But anyhow, so it's a 3-page paper, MLA, and you have to use like these sources. And so his position is that it's both illegal. It was both illegal and unethical. And it was an interesting read. He basically said the background of what happened with Truman. And then I think at the time Eisenhower was a general, and so he talked about, like, he had some quotes about like how there was a better way of doing it instead of bombing Japan, right, in 1945. And so I was like kind of like wanting to, I mean, it's a 3-page paper. He did 3, and then he went like a fourth of the fourth page. So maybe he didn't have space to elaborate, but I would have wanted for him to give an example of what something like a diplomatic or pull out a rule or a law or something like that. But what he ended up doing is he cited the Geneva Convention. Is that 1907? And then that was in place before the bombing. And so he was saying that the guidance on non-combatant deaths or whatever was not clear, was vague. And so he thinks that even though it was vague, they really should have thought about the impact. Hi guys, I'll read like when I'm done driving. I apologize. He should have thought about the impact. He said that we, America, should have thought about the impact of bombing Hiroshima, and then I think it was followed up by bombing another city. But anyway, he had to focus on Hiroshima. So he said that when you think about it, all of those other international laws for engagement were at a time where there wasn't a nuclear bomb, is what my kid is saying. And so they should have still followed some guidance about thinking about, well, are we bombing like villages with children and people, or like what? And then I'm doing this explanation worse than his paper. I apologize. But so then he then also brought up the fact that one of the things that was said as to why the nuclear bomb had to be used was to preserve American soldiers' lives and to protect American lives as well. And so what was pointed out is that but Japan didn't have a nuclear bomb. And so doing that did end the war quickly, but they're still in Japan feeling the after effects, or what he called fallout, from having nuclear bombs dropped on them twice, and so I thought that was interesting, his point of view about it also being illegal in his view, because I would have argued that technically it's not illegal, which is I think what the American government says, but it's definitely unethical, because just because technically it's legal doesn't mean that it's right, and that's something that I learned when I was in law school, is that there are laws out there, right, that are unethical or interpreted in unethical ways, but they're still the law, right? And so I wish that he had gotten more into that, like showing that he can separate an understanding of the rule of law, right, and the spirit of the law, and that you're supposed to follow the law. But then he also feels that it was an unethical act because they kind of found like a loophole in essence. But he did really well. So that was his paper. Let me read this. So the Good Voyage says, what is going on? Hi, I'm just going to pick up my son from school, from Hamlin, from university. And then Awesome Addie said, yep. And I think he's talking about something that I said while I was talking about my kid's paper. Thank you for the likes. I appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe too. You want to catch my shenanigans. But yeah, so that was the paper this morning. So he had to turn it in at 8 o'clock, but he had to be in class at 8. So we had to sort of like maneuver to get him there. And then there was something going on at work with my husband and his computer. And I think unfortunately that threw him off as well. And so I'm hoping that he's having a better day than what I was overhearing this morning. But yeah, I don't know. I also ended up thinking a lot about this weekend, the activities that we had this weekend. I hope that hi Tom, it is a beautiful day out. I hope that I was gonna say the connection is okay, because in this area it'll tend to drop, so I don't know. that this weekend, I don't know if you guys saw a little bit yet. It's gonna be in the vlog that I put out in October. Like around the first 3 days, I put out what I did in September. And so we went to the Ordway yesterday as a family. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. I think that you can tell that the staff really like treasure the history at the Broadway Theater in St. Paul, and there is so much history and culture about just the city of St. Paul, the state of Minnesota, and the different artists that have come through at the Ordway. We got to look at the dressing rooms. There was the rope person with the curtains showing the kids like how the ropes go down. The lighting was, I love lights. I love lighting. Lighting will change your life. The right lighting in any room will change your life, honestly. That was a lot of fun. My husband ended up letting loose and showing out, which it's always fun. I'm never prepared for it because he doesn't always let loose, you know? So when he does it, it's fun. It's nice to see him like having fun. And then I go into like protective mode. Hi, Tom. Again, I go into protective mode because I see myself as my family member's like protector. I know. That's just how I am. And so I go into like protective mode to make sure that like nobody's bullying mine. He's grown. He's in his 40s, but I'm very like protective. So I think that everybody should be able to have fun and enjoy themselves. It doesn't matter how old you are, you know? And the fact that there's people that are haters, just because you don't feel comfortable doing it, I don't know why you have to make somebody feel uncomfortable. Like, it's just so wild to me. And then there was also the ones where, unfortunately in this climate, right, it's a reality. There were some that, where I can't explain the look, because I'll see them in some pictures. I don't see them when they're doing it, but I see them in the pictures that I'm taking after the fact when I look at like portraits of my kids and stuff. And they look like, not even like as old as civil rights era, honestly. But, well, no, it is civil rights era, sorry. I was gonna say not as old as Civil War era, but yeah, they look as old as civil rights era, where they may have been like kids at the time. And they have the same face that their parents had when they saw like an African American child go into a school to integrate it, or an African American family move into the community, or I think it was illegal to be biracial at the time until Love v. Love, but in Virginia. But anyway, yeah, so there was a lot of that, and that makes me uncomfortable because I know that my kids see it. I try to tell my kids to stop locking eyes with these demons. I'm sorry. I hate to call these people that, but what else can you be when you're purposely trying to make like a 10-year-old feel uncomfortable? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, no, like what? So anyway, you know, God doesn't let me see it in the moment to protect me, you know. But I see it after the fact, and it's like these conversations that I have to have with my children around internalized racism and internalized self-hate, you know, like that's real as a black family. Let me roll up this so that I'm not drawing too much attention to myself as I wait for my kid. So we are at his school. And then there was also an email that was sent out to my kid's school community. And he was telling me, so he was showing me the code of conduct for Hamlin and about like civility and everything like that. I love it. I love it about the process of when a charge is brought against a student or something happens. And what they explained was that there was an incident in the dorms post Charlie Kirk's assassination. There was a racist offensive on the basis of race offensive incident that occurred in the dorms, in one of the dorms. And so he was talking to us about it, and he said to me, so he's a sophomore, so he said to me that just in the last couple of weeks he's noticed a change in the climate, like on campus. And I was like, really? Oh, wow. And so he said, like, for example, he'll just be walking, he'll be traveling to a different class, and people are just dropping the R word, right, in conversation, not aimed at him, but just in conversation. And he was saying that to him, that is a sign that the climate here at his university, that there's been a shift, and he doesn't necessarily feel as comfortable, like expressing himself because of what he's seeing and witnessing. And I thought to myself, you know what? I didn't say this to him, but I thought to myself, the fact that you had a whole year as a freshman where you felt like safe and that it was a community and you could share ideas in this climate, because I think it was during the election last year time. But the fact that you felt that way even once is a big accomplishment. I didn't tell him this, but I feel that because there's so many of us of all different ethnicities, nationalities, races, creeds, country of origin, religions, that cannot say that we felt completely comfortable and welcomed a part of like one as a community with our undergraduate university experience or studies. So he has at least that year, and I think that that's awesome. And that is a testament to Hamline University, on God. I absolutely love this school for my kids. I absolutely love this school for my kids. It is so fucking expensive. It is so expensive. Even with full scholarship, it's so expensive. But yeah, I just thank God for helping us figure something out for him to go, because especially as of this, it's very important to have a solid education as your foundation. It's not just a piece of paper, it molds. You go to the right place, it molds your mind, because as you're learning, you're taking in information, and then they're walking you through how to critically think and analyze and look at this information and then give it back to them. Growth occurs there, and I'm very thankful, for that, and grateful that my kid gets to experience that. So that's that. It was kind of scary looking at the policies, honestly, because they make sense, right? And it had me thinking like, okay, civility, right? And so I'm going to first start speaking from the position that I aspire, right? The person I aspire to be, and I have to work really hard every day to stay in that place, right? And so what helps me is thinking about my faith, right? I know, but it's a bit different from how we hear it when people use their faith to hurt other people and wield their power, whatever, against other people in the name of religion, right? That's awful. So thank God I don't do that, right? I actually make a note not to do that. So coming from that place to think about civility, right? I love what I read, the Hamline policy. Like, it is awesome, It's basically, be respectful, The gist of it to me is be respectful. You don't have to say everything that you're thinking or feeling. You can be offended and keep it to yourself, and just think about the greater good of the community, and think about lifting each other up and contributing to each other's education and growth and knowledge in a way that makes the community as a whole stronger. So each individual is a piece for the strong Hamlin community, right? It's not like one individual who's strong who came out of Hamlin. So getting him to think about his experience in college in terms of like a community, and him being a part of something bigger, you know, than himself, and having a larger impact is awesome. So from that standpoint, absolutely. But then I start to think about the human, right, person in me. It is so hard, especially in my older age. When I was younger, I know this is gonna sound like counter, but when I was younger, I didn't really care, right? I didn't care about what anybody had to say about me. I was here for, like, at the school. I was going to school for my degree, and that's it. And I get my degree, and then I'm moving on to this, because my eye was always on what I want to do in the future, which has always been helping people, right? It's always been, you know, working in a pro bono capacity if I get licensed as an attorney, or working on a sliding fee scale as a psychologist, or, you know, the government pays you when you work, because I worked at the Minnesota Sex Offender Program as a psychologist, level 3 for the state. And so that you just collect your pay. But even in the sex offender program, these are people who have done bad things, right? Bad things, horrible things. And the Christian piece of me, right, is like, but these are not bad people. They have done bad things. So you still treat them with human dignity and respect. It doesn't mean that you don't do your job. They're there for a reason, right? But you can still treat people with human dignity. And now, right, I find it harder because I'm more plugged into my family, right? Like, so homeschooling and actively parenting instead of being like at a job. And so when people come with a lack of civility around myself or my family, it becomes more difficult for me to, especially with my children witnessing any sort of like offensive language around racism or race, their race especially, it becomes very difficult for me to not say anything, right? So I've noticed that because, you know, Jim Crow is still alive and well. I don't care what anybody says. I've noticed that sometimes, no matter how I say it, right? It could be the most civil way of saying to a family, that's this. Hi, you know, there's a whole line right here. People are waiting in line. We're in the middle of, you know, can you, because this is what happened yesterday. The guy was showing us the ropes, literally, for the curtains, and this family came up and just started talking to him while he was talking to us. And he's also, so he started talking to them, and then before you know it, the kid's like, I want to go. And we're still standing there. We're still standing here. Like, one of our kids is gone, and there's 3 children. Like, what is happening? Because you know that if I had gone up there to start to ask him any question, he would have shamed me. And I know this. I know this because it has happened. It has happened where I was literally just asking a question, not even trying to cut, you know, like, where do we go? This is our first time here, and I got shamed. So to see this happening, you know, I was just like, so I said, oh, excuse me. And I pointed, and there was a whole line. There was a whole line. I said, there's a whole line, you know, right here. And the rest of the people in the line wouldn't have said anything. And I realized that. And I thought, later on, I thought about it, and I was like, it really wasn't necessary for me to say anything. Like, if that kid wants to cut because he has first-class citizenship by virtue of this, and we have second-class citizenship by virtue of me having this, and them being half this, then so be it. It's still an experience that God is affording us, has provided us, and I need to be grateful for it. And that is very hard for me to come to terms with, because I know what that does to the children watching this. I know what that does to them, you know? And I think I just have to do extra like work on the other end to have them understand that it's, let me lock my car door, because have them understand that that is actually the way that the Catholics are telling us to be, and that Jesus wants us to be. It's that whole like be a slave type of thing, and it's hard when you were actually a literal freaking slave. You look like, you know, and there's still like not fully an apartheid, but you know, there's definitely differences, right? And not just by skin color, all of them, all of the differences in America, there's going to be something popping off for you. So yeah, so I'm kind of navigating that with my children to make sure that they don't have internalized hate for themselves and for who they are. I think of it in terms of also anyone who's different, because the gag is everyone's different. Everyone's unique. That's the gag. But it's very clear that people just don't let you be you, you know? And so this whole spiel started with me talking about how I saw my husband letting loose and having a good time at the Ordway, and I was still watching, you know, to make sure that he's safe. And, you know, people were looking like they were taking issue with someone experiencing joy and not infringing upon any of their rights to do anything. You know, you don't have to look, you know, but yeah. So it is now 12:24 and my kid is gonna come out. So I'm gonna drop off now. Thank you for joining. God bless you. I love you. Thank you for subscribing. Welcome to my new subscribers. What up, what up, what up? To my old Les Villageois. That's your name. In translation, it's the villagers, but it's Les Villageois. And that's it. Catch you later. Love you.